The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody to the Paranormal View right here on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate everybody. If tonight you do have questions, you can private chat them to either H. Foister or Ceiling Cat. We will get those answered for you. And Jeff hopefully will be back on here in a minute. He was on, and I think he dropped off. But if you're listening from somewhere else and you didn't want to come to the chat room, you can still ask a question by sending it to theparanormalview@gmail.com, and we will get those answered. With that, we got a great guest lined up tonight, and we got with us Barbara Duncan.
I am here, and I forgot to remind you to start taping.
I was already taping.
Oh, okay. That's good.
I got it. And Jeff, are you back on yet?
Yeah, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's see how long I stay on.
All right. Yeah, you dropped off, or we could tell when that happened.
Yeah.
All right. We do have a great guest, and why don't, because, we got a good show lined up, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions tonight. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Yes, so tonight we have one of our favorite returning guests, Thomas Wertman, former Dean of the American National University, as a State Director at MUFON, and former Co-Director at, but still works with, the Cleveland Ufology Project. So welcome back, Thomas Wertman. Yay!
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Right. Of course, you know the drill because you're not new to this place. You're just practically, you might say, one of the gang.
I'm like the relative you can't get rid of.
All right, we got. I see that because I was on the site, a couple other sites too, for MUFON. And I see that most of the meetings and conferences have been canceled because of the coronavirus. How has the Corona-19 affected the sightings and reports of UFOs?
Well, you bring that up, and the other day, I was just out driving around because it's about the only thing you can do right now. My wife, she's got, has dementia, and one of the things I have to do is get her out of the house and just drive her around the area. So we hop in the car. And one of the things I noticed on her, Henry, is you look up in the sky and you don't see contrails. I mean, you think about last year or the other years, you would see contrails all over the place. And I didn't see a single one in like over an hour I was out. And I just pulled up some software I've got just to double check, flights in the area. And I'm seeing no commercial flights probably within like 50 to 70 miles. We're just not getting a whole lot of airline traffic in the region. And to reinforce that, one of the things I used to love to do is go out by one of the local airports, Cleveland Hopkins Airport. And I used to just love and park and just watch the airplanes coming in and out. Well, you can be out there now, and you can be sitting there quite some time, and you don't see a whole lot of traffic out there, air traffic. And if you look at the airport, and I'm sure it's not just Cleveland Hopkins, but when you check out the internet and check out how many aircraft are basically being parked and idle because of this virus situation. I counted like 40 plus aircraft alone just setting out at our local airport with the engines covered up, and they were basically like being stored there. And I think I saw a report the other day where there's like 800 aircraft worldwide were basically being parked because of not enough passengers right now.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a big thing.
Well,
with the virus situation.
There was a YouTube article across which I came about that this is probably the best time to book flights in the future. And in fact, a lot of airlines hoping to get some sort of, capital eventually. They're very lenient with change of schedule and or refunds if the lockdowns stay as draconian as they are, that eventually, they're like, oh, sorry, we still can't help you, so we'll let you reschedule further down the line. But apparently a lot of the fares are insanely low right now for reservations in the future.
I don't doubt that at all, because they were saying the number of aircraft. I mean, last time I flew, they're paying people to take another flight because they were being overbooked. Now their seats empty on aircraft and they're flying around because they just want to keep the aircraft flying.
Yeah, so my brother used to do that. When he lived in California and we were back in New Jersey, he would visit, but he would be flexible with his return. So we would go to the airport, and back then, this is pre 9/11, so you didn't have to, you could go right to the gate with your relative, and they would say, who wants to give up their flight and fly tomorrow, and we'll give you a voucher for a free flight. My brother would always volunteer. He'd come home for another night.
How'd that work out?
It worked out very well. He would pull it off a number of times. So he would get free flights in visiting.
Well, I'm asking, because I've been thinking about doing that a lot. If they'll give me a couple $100 in vouchers or something like that, maybe it might be worth it,
Hey, never can tell. That'd probably make it awful good if you're wanting to go out there to Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, exactly, Exactly. But it's changed a lot of that. I don't see the number of reports coming in on there, Henry, that are potentially aircraft, because, you've got such fewer flights out there right now.
Right. But I would say within the next 3 weeks, things are going to be kind of opening back up some. Do you see more air travel then?
Oh, yeah. I think people are getting buggy right now. I know I am. So I imagine other people are too. And there's going to be people who want to take that chance, that, okay, I'm on a plane, but it's only like an hour, a couple hours, something like that, to go on vacation, and they're going to want to go. I'm just in that age group where I'm hesitant right now about doing that.
Yeah.
It's bad enough just going to the grocery store and putting up with people that don't know about maintaining social distances. And I'd probably go nuts on an airplane. I'd be one of those passengers that would be arrested probably.
But it really must make it easier to detect and sort out UFOs.
It does.
That there are little things flying around, but not much.
Yeah, it does, Barbara, and that's where I've seen a big difference at. Before, I'd spend a lot more time researching. Did this person potentially see an aircraft, a life flight helicopter, something that has, of a man-made situation? A lot more emphasis. Now, I can go right into the map on there, and I can basically dial up the time frame I want. And it's like you're looking almost like blank sky most of the time. So if there's something in the air over there in that region that's got a transponder on it, it's going to make it easy to figure out, if it's man-made or not.
Now, with a lot of the pollution dying down, is it possible also that some people might be mistaken even seeing satellites?
Well, that's another thing. I was thinking about that the other day. When you look at the pictures, like out of India especially, how much difference it is. And even here, most people probably don't even notice it, but around our region, we still had a few of the factories, the older factories, that put out some of that nasty soot. Now you just don't see it. It makes it so much nicer on one hand. But the satellites, the ones we're getting a lot of, are the Elon Musk, SpaceX, Starlink satellites. I still get a number of those after every launch, because what Elon Musk is doing is he wants to put, I think the initial goal is like 1,000 plus satellites up in space, and they're eventually going to form a chain almost like a train going around the world. And the whole idea is to get global internet communication. So when they launch a satellite, which there'll be another one probably here very shortly, I didn't look at the schedule, but it'll deploy 60 satellites, and they're just kind of squirt out about like eggs, one after the other one, when they deploy. And the magnitude brightness is like Venus when they come out. They're very bright.
Right. Yeah.
And they gradually work themselves up into a higher orbit. So until they get up in that higher orbit, they stay relatively bright, and we get a number of reports. And the good thing is MUFON's given me some latitude now on filling out reports, because the reports we have to do are fairly lengthy as far as an investigation goes. But now that if it's something that we're positive it's linked back to Starlink, we've got a much easier way to close those out now. It takes a lot less paperwork.
And that's what this last weekend I was initially looking out the window for. Was
I know.
To the southwest of me, or the southeast. You could visually see Starlink if you looked.
Yeah, and I've been trying to see them. I mean, right now we've got a cloudy night tonight, so chances are I won't be able to see anything like that if they're visible. But if you go to a website, your listeners go to a website called Heavens Above. If they go to that website, they can put in their location, and what they do is they've got a little map in there that you can click on. You don't have to know like longitude and latitude. You can just click on a general area, and it'll take in place the location of view at that region. And it'll give you a time frame down below if you scroll through a lot of different options. There's some down there where you can look for like the brightest satellites, visible satellites on that given day. And if you look down, you'll see a series of Starlink satellites. And now they've got it broken down on their Barbara so that it tells you like this is the 6th launch, the 5th launch, the 4th launch. It breaks it down by launch, and the higher number is the most current launch. And it'll display the time frames that they're visible in your region, if they are visible.
Well, with less pollution, the skies should be clearer at night. You should be able to see a whole lot more stuff other than just satellites also.
Oh, yeah. A whole lot.
Except for light pollution.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the only thing you run into here, because I'm in the close enough to the city. We get quite a bit of city lights.
Well,
now, the astronomy club I'm part of, that's a whole different situation. You go down there, that's way out in the country. There's zero ambient light, so if you put your hand out in front of your face, Henry, and you go walking through the woods, you're going to hit a tree. You're not going to see your hand or a tree.
I could do that anytime.
Believe me, I did that one night. I'm like, yeah, I can see good enough at night. I'll walk back through these woods back to where my car is at. Wham!
Yeah, I know. And I'm doing that in the house. Even with lights on, I hit things.
But when you're down there at night, I mean, the sky is just incredible because you don't have any ambient lighting around that whole region. It is dark.
So with it being like that, are you getting more reports because people are just, they think that they're seeing something, but it's only one of the satellites or something?
Yeah, we're still getting reports. I think the numbers are probably about the same, if not maybe up slightly from last year. And I think that once people start getting up, because the weather here, again, is kind of give and take. I mean, this morning we had snow out. So some people are still staying in, but when the weather gets a little bit nicer, I'm betting by about the end of this next week, the weather's going to start getting into the 70s. You're going to have more people out doing yard work, the barbecues and stuff.
Yep.
Those reports are going to go up because typically here in our region, the number of reports start going up in like the May, June, July, up till like October. The reports are much higher. Now, in contrast, like if you're out in California, like where Barbara's at, you're going to see more even number of reports year round. just because of the fact of more temperate weather all year round.
Well, we were almost triple digits the other day here in California and Los Angeles in the Valley.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
It was well past 95 degrees when we went up into the Valley.
It's been in high 40s, low 50s most of the time, but they're calling for freeze tonight.
Yep.
Yep. So.
Oh, and where Jeff is, there's another interesting phenomenon that makes me think of underwater UFOs, and that is the luminous tide down there, or luminous algae, Jeff.
Oh,
Have
with
you
the
seen
dolphins going through
Yeah.
it? Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
So a friend of mine are sending me photographs, and it looks like there's a light shining from under the ocean up. So you can kind of see where people are getting that idea that there might be underwater UFOs down there.
And isn't that where, like, was it the island of Catalina or something's off
Yeah.
the coast? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had
Catalina is one of the bigger regions for UFO sightings out there.
Yep.
And it's haunted, too, in there, so that's... It's a shame. They have a thing where you can actually, on your birthday, you have to make a reservation in advance, you can go back and forth from Catalina for free, taking the boat. But I have yet to do that. Only been out here for like a whole bunch of years. But I keep forgetting that that's something I can do. So yeah, I need to do that eventually.
Now, if you've gotten any reports, people calling in saying that they've seen a UFO, with the way everything is for people having to stay in, or not out running around, and you do all your checking, and you say it might be something to go talk to the people, are you going to have to wait until all this is over with before you can go talk to them, or is there ways that you actually go and check it out?
Well, there's a number of things I could do. One is I'm very internet savvy, so like when I look over the region, Google Earth provides me a lot of information about the region. And what I can do is, if the witness gives me like a street address, like I think it was about a week ago, Henry, I had somebody, they sent me some video that they wanted me to review. And I said, just give me your street address. And I was able to drop myself down using Google Earth on their street area. And when I looked at the video, I could correlate the video to the area around their house, and I could get a good idea of exactly where they were looking at. So that was a great tool that minimized that, personal contact. That was one thing. Another thing I like to do is at times, I like to see the witness's face. I like to put body language back to, what they're talking about, because you can kind of see how, the person felt when they went through this experience. And most everybody out there is, being very honest. They're telling you exactly what happened. But then once in a while you get somebody who like, wait a minute, this is kind of like, it seems made up. And there are some people out there that do that occasionally. They make some stories up for whatever reason, and they turn a report in. So I like to see the body language. Well, one of the things I can do is I can do Skype. I can put the person on Skype, and we can do a video conference back and forth. So this way I can take and talk to them about what they experienced. I can even have them take their cell phone outside and even show me the region they were at via their cell phone using Skype if necessary. So I'd rather minimize that contact, not just for myself, but again, looking out for the protection of the witness, because we don't know if we've been exposed to something, not just doing UFO reports, but just in general by doing shopping, anything else, and we don't want to pass on to somebody else. So I want to minimize that if possible.
Now, have you seen other MUFON directories where they've been getting a lot of calls also?
Well, I've tried to look at some of them, but the problem is I don't have time to go through all of them. The other day, I just happened to go and look at some other reports, just as general reference back to what was happening here. I had some individuals reporting a certain type of sighting, and I wanted to see if there were correlating cases in other states. So I went back through, and it seemed like, most of the time that the individuals in the other states were basically getting the same type of reports we do, because I can look at the descriptions of what's in the report. Their reports are very similar. Now, the thing that I can't necessarily do is I can't see all the investigation process. Because, again, even though I'm a state director, they like to keep certain things at times private and keep it within that own state.
So has anything that you've heard of come in from anywhere across the states that is a credible sighting?
Right now, a lot of stuff I've been coming up with is stuff that can be explained. Now, some of the things, though, are a lot more challenging, though, Henry. I got a picture in the other day that was from a trail camera. And this trail camera, you saw a series of lights going across the upper right-hand portion of the picture. And when I saw, I'm like, wow, that's really unique. And here is a deer that was startled in the headlights, basically. It was like about 6 feet in front of the camera on the lower left-hand side. Now, the thing that I want to compliment the witness on, the witness is very, very cooperative. I said, I would like to come down and see it, but on the other hand, can you help me out? So what he did is he took the same trail camera that was still set up in the exact same location where the pictures were taken at, and he took daytime shots for me as reference. Now, what I did is I overlaid the daytime shots and the nighttime shots together so I could see where the lights were at in reference to the images. And you could see that where the lights were at, the foliage was so dense behind, out of view, it was in the dark that you couldn't see, that the lights wouldn't show through the trees whatsoever. The foliage was that dense, so it's telling me that, okay, these things have to be some sort of a light source in front of the foliage. Well, one of the things I had to think about, Henry, right away was also potentially paranormal.
Right.
Were these things potentially paranormal, like orbs? But these orbs were evenly spaced except for one gap in between the middle of them. There's actually 8 lights going across with a gap in the middle, 4 and 4. Well, this is where it also helped. I said, can you get me some information on the make and model of camera? Now, the one thing that happened is when he sent me the pictures, it didn't have any information, electronic information, stored within the picture regarding the make and model of camera and all the settings on it.
Okay, that's kind of odd right there.
Yeah, you're listening, and that's at times that's a red flag for me. When I get a photograph in, and the witness submits a photograph, there's software I can use to look at the electronic data. They call it metadata information within the photograph that tells me to make, the model of camera, the camera settings, whether the flash fired or not. And to me, all that information is very good, Barbara, because when I look at the photographs, it gives me an idea, for example, like on a trail camera, it tells me how far the infrared light should actually go out away from the camera. So how far of a distance should be illuminated by the camera. So I get kind of an idea of depth. Well, none of that information was there, and at times that's a red flag. But when I zoomed in on a photograph, I noticed a couple things about it. One is in the lower corner of the photograph, I saw almost like, when somebody takes a picture of a picture, that they don't quite get it lined up.
Right.
Well, a border, like a border.
A border.
Photo.
Yep. I saw almost like a border, and I thought, did this guy take a picture of his trail camera screen? And when you zoom in close, I could see the pixels of the LCD screen on his trail camera.
Ah.
So I sent him back a text and said, did you take a picture off of your trail camera screen? He goes, how did you know that? And I said, educated guess. But again, he was very honest. He says, yeah, he says, I didn't have a way to download it to send it to you right away, so I just did this. Well, he gave me the make and model number. And when I went in, I looked up how far out the infrared light should be going from the camera. I could see what the depth of field should be. And when I looked at the picture of the camera on there, Henry, I noticed something unique. The infrared lights on the front of the trail camera had rows of 4 with a gap in between and another row of 4.
Huh.
Well, the lights in the picture were 4 with a gap and 4. What happened was the deer, I think, was so close to the camera, it caused lens flare.
Oh.
And what you
Why
were
does this
seeing
sound
and you were seeing a reflection of the infrared lights on the camera in the photograph.
So essentially, it was the deer's eyes that were reflecting?
No, actually, the body was so bright it was unreal. It was that close. It had to be maybe 6 feet away. It was that close. But another thing you look for, too, on her, Jeffrey, is when you see lens flare, you look at the distance from, like a lot of people send me photographs that are beautiful photographs of sunsets. We get a lot of those. And they say, look, I didn't see this object when I took the photograph, but when I looked at it afterwards, I could see this object.
Yeah.
Well, what you look at is the distance from the center of the frame to the sun. And then you look at the distance from the center of the frame to the lens flare or the object you're seeing, and you most always find it's exactly the same. And what they're seeing is lens flare most of the time.
Well, that's what happens when, J.J. Abrams is out hiking.
Yeah.
And also, it kind of makes me wonder with these, because cameras have mirrors in them. And, when I take photo shots of the moon, there is that little ball that comes off at the end, which isn't planet Nibiru. It's just the lens reflecting from the moonlight.
That you've got the sensor inside, too.
Yeah.
But you're right, and that was what I looked at in this situation. I thought about, okay, I haven't seen it in a situation with a trail camera, but when they take pictures of the let's say a sunset, the distance from the sun itself to the center of the frame, and the distance from the center of the frame to their object they're seeing are identical. Well, I looked at the image from the trail camera, the distance from the center of the frame to the deer, and the distance from the center of the frame to those 8 lights was identical.
So is this like that? I tend to watch this goofy show called Paranormal Caught on Camera, and apparently someone in, I don't know, the South Seas or something caught a photo, and the way I was looking at it, they were saying, oh, they caught this weird photo of double suns, and I'm like looking at it, I'm like, it just looks like a cloud is coming down and kind of splitting the large sun into what looks like 2 ovals. But they kept saying, oh, this kind of optical illusion, we can't figure out how it's done. I'm like, it just looks like the clouds. Why are you saying this? So it was kind of weird.
Oh, and that's one thing that drives me crazy, too. Now we're basically on house arrest. I think you look at it that way. I mean, how many shows can you watch during the day? And I turn on some of the shows, and sometimes I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Some of the stuff that's put out just to draw ratings and to sell airtime, basically. Some of them are pretty bad.
That's why the Ghost Hunters and are directed by their producers. If you want to stay on the air, you have to call the ghost a demon.
That would drive me crazy.
It drives me crazy all the time. I just want to reach through and smack them. I'm like, not everything's a demon.
Wow.
Well, I'm looking forward to the days with mirrorless cameras because it'll stop some of this from happening. But it drives me crazy. I do it for just a photogenic look of getting that second moon in there. which is usually blue.
Mhm.
And, it's done on purpose, but some of these people who don't really use their cameras correctly. And the other thing I see is they're taking it indoors and you get light shining from an interior light.
I've had that too. And there was one not long ago that was popping up on the internet. And people were saying it couldn't be lights from inside the house. And my first response is, okay, if you just want to verify it, here's how a simple way you do it.
Go outside.
Yeah, exactly. If you're taking a picture through patio doors, go on the other side of patio doors and take a picture going the other way.
There's an Instagram photo of this beautiful lake and these clouds, and the poster even says the reflection of my ceiling light looks like a UFO, and you look at it and there's this orange glowing, it looks like a UFO, and he says he just points out this is a reflection of my kitchen light, and the jokey response to the comment was, oh yeah, nice try, but that's definitely a UFO. But of course he was being facetious as well.
Yeah.
So my question is, are you on Instagram?
No.
You should be, because
No.
there's so much cool stuff on there, both funny and paranormal and UFOs.
Well, it's the same as I don't go on Twitter either. I don't tweet.
Well, yeah, Twitter is
Tweet.
become a nightmare.
Yeah. But I don't, and sometimes just because of the fact that, so much stuff comes in as it is already, that it's a challenge keeping up with some of it. And I've had the same type of photographs you're talking about, Jeffrey, where I had one come from Canada that they sent me to review. And it was actually 3 lights reflecting off of patio doors. But, I mean, it really was a cool photograph, though. I think we lost Jeffrey.
No, I'm here. I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but it was a great photograph. But I sometimes I've been tempted to go onto things like the Instagram, but on the other hand, I'm like, do I want to or not?
Well, there's, like I say, both a lot of very funny stuff, a lot of creepy stuff, and a lot of funny creepy stuff. Because there are ones that have the two sentence horror stories that you read the first sentence, your brain puts it in one perspective, and then the second one's like, oh, that went dark really fast.
Wow.
That's like my twisted sense of humor stuff.
I was looking around at different MUFON directors, the state directors, and it struck me that there is so many of them that only lists an email. They don't even have a website. Why is it that state directors, they don't have actual websites?
And careful, Thomas, he's dating other MUFON directors. So.
Oh, really?
No. I was just looking up to see who was where. The different. I seen one on one of the shows somewhere, and they was talking about some UFOs, and I just thought, well, I'll look them up, and I started looking all around because I didn't know which director they were. And I got looking, I said, half of these don't even have a website. All they give you is an email. So how do they, do they have websites and they just don't want to publish it? Or you can only contact them by email?
Well, it varies a number of times. Each state, can set up their own website if they want. I'm lucky enough to have a webmaster who's handled ours for a number of years. This way he maintains the website, post all my stuff for me I need. And he's even got an email. What I do is I've got one email that goes to our Ohio MUFON site that he relays the information on to me. And I hate to admit it, but a number of times I'm not bright enough, Henry, to figure out that when I respond to the email, I have to change the email to the person's email address who sent it in, not send it back to my webmaster.
Oops.
And he jokingly sends me an email saying, "Hey, dummy, you did it again," basically. But it's up to each state. Now, here's one thing you can run into is one is some states they don't have that many people in MUFON working the state itself. So you could basically have a state director who's doing investigations and other things along with it. So it's like they've got their plate full, and they don't have enough time to do the website. Or they may have just their email address listed on MUFON, and I'm not sure why they don't have it out other than that. I can't respond to that, but they just don't have the website itself just because of not enough people volunteering in that state. But here's another thing. When you get certain states, now I can't think of any off the top of my head, but just to throw a couple possibilities out there. What if you've got a state like South Dakota, North Dakota? You may not even have anybody within that state that is, stepping up to volunteer for MUFON. So what may happen is they may have another individual handling that state that doesn't live in that state. There's a number of those across the country where the individual that's the state director doesn't live there. And they're just handling that state to take care of it for MUFON. Now, if somebody from that state becomes interested, they show a strong enough interest, they show they're dependable and so forth, they could potentially put somebody from their own state then back in that position. That would be I think, MUFON's first choice. But if you don't have anybody stepping up to volunteer to help out, that's another problem. So when you see somebody from a certain state, that state director may not necessarily be there if somebody hasn't stepped up.
Do you think that maybe the state itself is not getting that many reports of UFOs?
That's the other thing that can happen, because here in Ohio, we'll get, let's see, last year we had like between 250, 300 cases alone come into Ohio. This year, chances are we're going to go over that, the way it looks right now, even with the shutdown, we're going to go over that. But then you've got other states who may be lucky to get one or two a month. So that goes along with it then, here. That, there's just not enough cases coming in. But here's the thing that could happen. Here where I'm from in Ohio, we've had a long history of UFO research groups. One of the groups I was with, the Cleveland Ufology Project, they were founded in 1952. And until the virus came up, they were still meeting to this day, it's one of the oldest groups in the world, without a doubt, that's continually meeting. We've had a number of other groups over all those years. And the thing about it is you've got people out there promoting UFO research, getting cases. Like here in Ohio, there's a gentleman that was named John Timmerman. John Timmerman, back years ago, back in, 1980s, he was going out to shopping malls. He was setting displays up in shopping malls of UFO pictures, UFO investigations, and what he had is a little area all blocked off where you basically had to give a donation to get in, if I remember correctly. And he would show people all this information about UFOs, but then what he would do is, hey, have you ever seen a UFO yourself? Yeah. So he would get the reports, and he would document that stuff. But it was a great way of promoting that things, and he did something that was just out of the box. Well, actually, I had two or three friends submit reports back in the 80s that I was able to pull the data upon when they told me about it, because he kept that information all those years, and I was able to access it. But if you think about it, it's constantly promoting the subject of UFOs and putting, a positive light on it. That it's not, crazy. People are seeing things that we can't explain. And there are people out there doing serious research to see if they can, number one, find an answer for what the person saw. But if not, and it goes in that category of unknown, we're categorizing and cataloging that data that went along with it to maybe use for reference for the future. So we've had a long history here in this state that's been going on, since the 1950s. I don't know how many groups there have been in Ohio off the top of my head, but in a number of groups over the years. And when you get people like for 60 years, 70 years promoting the subject, it builds that interest. I've gone out to a couple local libraries in the country that you'd think, okay, here we're out in the sticks. This is farm country. And I had 60 people show up for a talk because they're interested in the subject. And some of these people remembered these old research groups. And that interest has just been ongoing all these years. Now, if other states, and this is one of the things that MUFON does, is MUFON wants their state directors and other individuals involved with MUFON to get out and talk about the subject and promote it and build that interest. And I think if some of these other states that had maybe lower numbers, if they were doing that, I'm not saying they're not doing it, but if they went out and kept promoting year after year after year, that interest may go up. And that beep you heard in the background was just a UFO report that came in.
There you go. All right.
I thought your cup of soup was ready in the microwave.
I do have the microwave in the office here, but my phone beeps when I get reports in.
Really?
Cool.
All right.
But this brings up another really interesting point, and that is, aside from the white vans parked outside the doors constantly, etc., what is the security, and how concerned are you for safety, just because of the topic that you're covering?
I see more people who turn reports in that are paranoid. And the bad part, Barbara, is you'll see somebody turn a report in that says, I don't want to give any information on where I'm at, but I saw this object was like a star. And it couldn't have been an airplane. It had to be a UFO, and it was a star-like object. And they're afraid that somebody's going to come at their door and knocking at the door. Well, I'm not going to say it can't happen, but it's highly doubtful. Some of the areas I've been exposed into, though, are a lot more extreme, where I've had to go out and interview witnesses that were potential autopsy witnesses at Wright-Patterson.
Really?
Yeah.
And you had to go there and interview people who said that they had seen an alien body?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't know if I'd ever told you about this story or not, Henry.
No, I haven't heard this one.
Okay. So we can tell you about the story. Well, this is what it was right before I became state director. And this was kind of comical. I love this part. I was the chief field investigator at that time for Ohio, and our state director gets a call from our international director that says they want to borrow me for a certain assignment. And she goes, well, what's the assignment? And he goes, I'm not going to tell you. You don't have any need to know. And she goes, yeah, but he's, basically works for me. And they go, we want him for an assignment. We're not going to tell you anything about it. And they didn't. So she gave the approval. I got the call. And they said, what we did is we received a call at our headquarters from an individual who said he walked in on an autopsy at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the 1980s. So they passed his information on to me. I was able to contact the witness. And now this is the type of individual I understand his hesitancy about, coming out and talking about, because he's been afraid. I mean, it happened in the 1980s. He's been afraid now for 30 years that this black Ford Galaxy is going to be sitting outside looking at his house. And, I understand that. I mean, think about this. If you worked at the Air Force Base and he was like a medical assistant at the base, and he just did normal duties down there where related back to medical assisting. On one day, he had to go into an area they called the morgue. And he had to go into the morgue area, and what was kept in there was medical supplies. And he says, that's just where we kept them at. He says, I'd been in there hundreds of times. He says, inside the morgue, of course, you always had these vaults, like you'd see in the movies, that the drawers pull out with the bodies and stuff in them. And he says they had these vaults in there, which was normal. But he says, one, when he looked at it, what struck him strange the first time he saw it was, it appeared that there was this lock that had been welded on haphazardly, that it wasn't designed that way. It was like somebody had put a lock on this thing. And he goes, he'd been in there this whole time on duty, and he says that vault had never been unlocked, never been opened. So on this one given day, he goes walking into the morgue. And he goes, the first thing he sees is the lock is off and the drawers pulled out. Goes, okay. So he just proceeds in like normal. And he goes to get his medical supplies, and he hears a noise in the autopsy room and turns around and sees a number of individuals gathered around a table, an autopsy table. And he says he recognizes one as being a colonel. He doesn't know who it was, but he says it was definitely a colonel. And he says the first thing that happens is this colonel starts screaming at him. What the heck are you doing in here? Who are you? And the guy came out and he goes, oh, I'm just trying to get medical supplies here. And he says he looks into the room and he says the body that's on the table is not human. He said the body on the table was a gray alien. He says it was without a doubt not human. He says the colonel screaming at me, you've got no business here, la, 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 la. And he said, I'm just getting the medical supplies. And he says, I just got the heck out of the room. Now, he's expecting to get really dressed down later on. But it appears they just let it drop. And probably just observed him to make sure he didn't talk about it. Or, like, especially probably through other people at the hospital, at the facility. Did he talk to other people? Did he ever bring the subject up? And he says, I was too scared. He says, in my opinion, I could have ended up at some base in the Arctic, for all I know.
Or in the next drawer over.
Exactly. There could have been a padlock on the next one to it. And that's where he could have been. And he goes, I never told my wife for 30-some years. And he says, until recently, he says, you know, right now, he says, I'm in my 60s. My health isn't good. And he says, I just feel like I got to get it off my chest. And he says, because I've been holding this in all these years. Now, he wasn't looking for any gain, because that's one of the things I was looking at. I said, okay, is this guy going to say, I'll tell you what, I'll go public with my story if you give me some money. He never said that. He just said, I just want to tell my story, and that's it. Well, we didn't even meet at his house. We met actually in a restaurant when we met, and I was able to record the whole conversation. And he seemed like he was being very forward, being very honest with everything. Now, there was some things I pulled out, pictures, diagrams of the base from what I could obtain of that same time frame. And either he, was unsure about some of the areas where they're at. Maybe his memory was fading. But I wouldn't come out and say beyond a shadow of a doubt, that everything that he answered everything the way I was expecting him to answer it. Let's just say that some things seemed like he was a little bit hesitant on. But the answer he gave me, at least he believed were true. Now, his memory may have faded on some things, because if you think about it, it's been 30-some years. Also, the pictures I had maybe weren't exactly the way the base looked at that time in certain areas, like where certain buildings were at. So that may have changed some too. But, he's appeared to be very honest. Now, that was the type of case where not just the witness, but myself personally, I was a little bit concerned that it wasn't just me. There was only 3 people in all of MUFON that knew what I was doing. That was an international director and the head of our media department, who I knew very well at that time, Roger Marsh. I haven't had contact with Roger for a while, but he reached out to me, and he was one who set a lot of stuff up. And I was organizing things through him. And when I went to leave, maybe I was just being overly paranoid, but I don't think so. There was a car that appeared to be following me quite a way home, because I had to drive about 150 to 200 miles to do the interview. And it was one of those that you get a little bit paranoid thinking somebody's following you. And what you do is you get off the interstate and you go around a bunch of side roads. And the next thing you know, you look around and this car is following you all these down these side roads. And then when you get back on the interstate, he's following you back on the interstate.
Huh. So
now, nothing happened. I'm still here with you.
Are you sure? How do we know?
Well, I've been on your show a number of times, so I checked your website. So that's one thing it says so. But, you know, in my own point of view, that's these are situations which are much more touchy on there. When you get something that's much deeper in content, let's just say. That, okay, here's a witness talking about this. And, okay, there's going to be people out there saying, he probably maybe saw things incorrectly, maybe he's making it up. But what I look for also on there, Henry, too, is correlating information. That maybe there's other people that saw the same thing. And eventually maybe they'll come out. And if this story doesn't go public, you know, and all of a sudden you get somebody coming in and talking about the same situation that didn't have any knowledge of the other one. Now you've got something, I don't know if we want to say concrete, but much more concrete. And that happened in a way, Henry, with the Cleveland group I was with. You always hear these stories, and you always wonder about some of these stories, how good, how honest people are being, or is things being made up, is things being distorted. Well, at one time there was a doctor that was a member of the group, and the doctor, they were telling me was one of his things that he was involved with basically was autopsies. And that was his specialty. Well, when I looked at his specialty, it also goes back to chemistry, body chemistry. Well, the story came to me that at one time that he was summoned to go down to Dayton, Wright-Patterson. And the reason he was summoned to go down there was because they wanted somebody from his specialty to do an autopsy on basically a body. And when he got down there, the body was not human. And it wasn't just him that was being summoned in. Evidently what they'd done, according to the story, is they looked for individuals of all various specialties from around the country. So they brought all these different individuals in with different unique specialties to examine the same body. And what they were to do, according to the information I got, was they did their examination, they reviewed it, they wrote a report out, and then they were told to forget everything, according to the story. Well, he evidently had mentioned it to a couple of people in the group, that's what had happened, that he was summoned down there. And he was involved with the Case Western, which is associated with Cleveland Clinic. And he was considered at that time, I guess, one of the top people in his specialty in the country. Well, if you saw him, I mean, from what they told me, he said he just appeared like any normal person because he lived in the region. He didn't act like who he was, but he kept it very private on what he did, that he was a doctor at the clinic. He just never promoted it. When he went into the meetings, he was very quiet. He did his thing. He had the interest in the group. But he didn't come out and say, hey, I'm a doctor at the clinic, except only a couple people knew it. Well, I was trying to pin the time frame down, and I could not pin the time frame down on when he did that autopsy. But I was always curious, and I don't want to connect dots incorrectly, but I was always curious if when that individual who I talked to, when he had his walk-in on the autopsy, if that wasn't the same time frame that this doctor was summoned from the clinic to do it. And I don't think it was that many years apart if it was a different instant. It seemed like they were from a relatively same time frame.
Okay, now here's a kicker. Being around bodies, they do not refrigerate and stay that way forever. And if you're talking 1980s, and this obviously wasn't the Roswell crash, aliens. So exactly how many crashes could there possibly have been and where?
That's a good question. That's a good question because I don't know where the origin of this was from. Now, there's always been the rumor, though, that at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they have cryogenic chambers. One of the stories goes that around the area, it's actually not that far from the museum, is where the mysterious, not the hangar, but actually the building is at, where the aliens were housed at. But there reportedly were chambers put down below the ground.
I can believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they said that at one time there was like a certain type of materials brought in that were highly unusual for building that were associated with that type of thing. And they were put down below ground. Now, I don't know if they kept them in a cryogenic chamber, if that would have any effect. If it was the same thing, I doubt it. But who knows how many they've got, Barbara? That would be a good question. I'm one that believes that, I mean, there's got to be a lot more than a Roswell.
I would assume that. I mean, there's been reports of a lot of different crashes and stuff, so there got to be more than just what was there.
Oh, yeah. We had one, it was kind of an unusual one I came across, and the reason I came across is it was from the same area that I used to live in. There was a one night, for some reason, I don't know why, I was just on the internet, and I was looking up UFO, and I came across a video interview with a couple of little old ladies in their 80s, and they happened to be in the same town, small town of like 20,000 people that I used to live in. So I'm like, wait a minute, UFO, two little ladies? I got to see this, you know? And the guy that interviewed him, his name was Grant Cameron. He's a UFO researcher. He's been doing a lot of research for years, and he knows, his specialty is what the presidents know or he thinks they know. Well, he was interviewing these little ladies, and the interview goes back to, I'm trying to guess, maybe 2000, somewhere in there. They were talking about their dad. Their dad, who was a Presbyterian minister from an area about 20, 30 miles from Ashland. Their dad had been talking to his cousin, and he went to see his cousin in Washington, D.C., and his cousin took him into the Capitol building. And this happened to be in the 1940s, and this is the story their dad told him before he passed away. He says, yeah, my cousin took me into the Capitol building, and he took me down to like a basement in the Capitol building, and he shows me jars with aliens in them. He says there were alien bodies in jars. Now, you think, first of all, okay, here's a Presbyterian minister telling the story. Here's a minister. And here's two little ladies relaying the story. Again, they seemed very honest. They would be very straightforward. They said, yeah, it had to be, we weren't sure the exact date, but it had to be the 1940s sometime. Well, they said, well, what about the Capitol building? When they checked out the Capitol building, there's no area in that region now like the basement, but in the 1940s, there was. But something that's the bigger part of the story is who the cousin was. His cousin was Cordell Hull. Now, Cordell Hull was the Secretary of State for FDR. And think about this. I mean, here FDR got elected in 4 terms, and Cordell Hull, I think, was, remember correctly, he was like the Secretary of State almost the whole time, if not the whole time. So here you've got one of the more powerful men in the country taking the Presbyterian minister down and showing him bodies in the Capitol building. And this was the 1940s, early 1940s, right around the wartime is when they, guessed. But that was before Roswell. And there was a crash in Missouri that might have been related to that was before Roswell. So I mean, there's who knows how many cases out there, Barbara, that there have been crashes, that things have been mysteriously ferreted away.
Maybe the Battle of Los Angeles really wasn't such a farce after all.
No, I mean, there's so many incidents out there that I'd love to have that Mr. Peabody Wayback Machine to go back and check out and research it, especially if I have the tools I do now to do research with. If I go back and check out, of course, well, first of all, we wouldn't have to worry about satellites back in the 1940s. But if you have the tools we have available now, I think it'd be an interesting challenge. I'm up for it.
Well, I've heard that story on a couple of other different episodes on UFO shows about the guy who had went into the lab and happened to see the body and everything. So somebody's leaked somewhere, or somebody just made the story up to start with.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, the guy could produce all the documentation showing me he was there at the base at that time. But the thing that we don't have at the end of the day that the skeptics are always going to look for is, okay, show me the body.
Right, right.
Or like they say online, no pictures, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right, we're going to take us a quick little break and got lots more to talk about when we come back. So just mute your mics and listen for me when I come back, because you won't hear anything till then. So, Jeff, you want to take us out?
Yep. You're listening to the Paranormal View with para-x.com with hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's awesome guest, Thomas Wertman. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View and the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. So hope everybody's enjoying the show tonight. We have with us Barbara Duncan. Maybe.
If I turn off my mute. Hello, everybody.
And speaking of those from around the world, where do we have listeners at tonight?
They're coming in from the United States, the United Kingdom, Singapore, Canada, and unknown.
All right. The unknown is back. They want to know what we know about them. That's what it is. Aliens. Okay. And we got Jeffrey Gould with us.
Hello.
And we have our great guest back with us, Thomas Wertman.
Still here.
They haven't come get you yet.
They haven't got me yet after that last story.
Well, on the flip side of the whole security thing, there's also people that are adamant that they've seen UFOs, are really interested in UFOs. And I mean, it's not like groupie status, but still, are there people who are so insistent, like in ghost hunting, that you go to investigate their house and they turn out to be crazy and scarily, personal safety scary crazy?
Yeah.
Like Simpsons cat lady crazy? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some of those who, they're, and the good thing is they're few and far between, at least the ones I've encountered. That, what you get first of all is when you get this, let's say, video or these pictures sent to you, the first words are, I know it's not an airplane. I know it's not a satellite. I know it's not planets. And I've taken hundreds of videos of these. And it kind of sets up a little, let's just say a caution flag. I'm not saying a warning flag, but let's be cautious. And it's how you approach the witness after that. And I've had a couple situations over the years where I've run into that. And it's, right out of the gate that if you do find an explanation for it, I'm not saying that I will, but if you do, the witness may not be acceptable of it right out of the gate. And I had a situation where a video was sent to me to review, and it came in a way that was being considered very high profile. The individual who reached out to me had a much higher position in MUFON. I won't say who it was, but the video was received by MUFON. The individual reviewed it. They said it was very, very unique. They identified a number of things in it, but it still needed much more research to be done, which is true. When I got the video, I reached out and contacted the witness, Barbara, and I had those signs come up right away. Well, I know this is absolutely not a satellite. I know this is absolutely not a planet. I had somebody on a television show, on a UFO television show that was on at that time frame, tell me that this is one of the best videos they'd ever seen. Now, the thing that you can have there, too, is I'm not saying that the words that they got from the person on the television show were exactly accurate. They might have been taken out of context. I don't know because I wasn't there with both of them at the same time when he had the discussion. But per the witness's story, he was being told that this is one of the best videos ever of a UFO, and this needed to be put on television. But when I looked at it, what we had on there was a star-like object. And this is where you knew you're in trouble right out of the gate, Barbara. This star-like object was stationary in the sky for quite a period of time. Now, I'm not saying UFO can't be stationary, but the second thing he said is during the interview, he says, well, it's come back to me night after night after night in basically the same area of the sky.
Okay.
And I said, well, how many nights? He said, well, at least 3 to 4 nights, but it's calling me out of my house to go look at it. I said, it's calling? He says, yes, it's summoning me outside of my house to look at it. And he had videos of each different night. Well, when he sent me the video, one of the things I did is, even without the need of social distancing, Henry, I incorporated social distancing. So I went back. I knew where he lived at. I utilized a tool I mentioned earlier, Google Earth. And I put myself standing exactly where he was at when he took his video. Next thing I did is, okay, here's his video. I used Google Earth to locate, all the basic landmarks. Then I went one step farther and I said, okay, night after night after night, most likely what he's seeing is a planet. So I went back and I pulled up Stellarium, which I use, which is an astronomy software. I was able to put myself exactly where he was standing at with my software, duplicate the times and dates when he had his sightings. And this is when you have one of these, let's just say WTF moments. And in this case, he was looking at Venus every night. And when I approached him about it, all I heard was somebody completely go off on me. I thought you guys were legitimate investigators. I thought you were serious researchers. This guy in this television show told me that this is a UFO. It's one of the best he's ever seen. Well, to begin with, the guy on the television show is not a UFO researcher. He was an actor. He was not a researcher whatsoever. He was an actor that was put in the show to fill a part. So that's the first problem that he had. He was believing somebody who had no knowledge of the subject really whatsoever, other than basically reading a cue card. That's what he was put there for. The second thing is I don't know whether what the guy told him was taken out of context or not. I don't know, because he was bound to determine that this thing had to be something completely out of this world. But then something else that was kind of, okay, it was humorous, I'll have to say. More than humorous, really, when he reviewed a video over and over again. But at one point, he's out filming this, and his wife goes, "That looks like a star to me." And he goes, no, it's not a star. She goes, "Okay, shut up, he's happy." And she was believing it was a star or planet the whole time. But as long as he was happy, she didn't care, and what he thought it was. She didn't care whatsoever. But, that was a situation where I was uncomfortable, just because of the fact that he was so determined,
so adamant,
to say the least, that this is exactly what it was. It was something from out of this world. And if you disagreed with him, that was not going to be good.
No.
You got that opinion right out of the gate. And the thing is, those are few and far between. So when you do your investigations, you just have to, reach out, make contact with the witness. And the bulk of people are very receptive. They just want to know what they might have seen. That's basically it. But occasionally you run into that person. And when you also hear that the person, let's say, has several hundred videos of UFOs, it's like either they're a UFO magnet, or maybe what they're seeing isn't a UFO. It's something commonplace. And we've had somewhere in this area where one individual was filming boat lights, lights on Lake Erie, boat lights, that said he was seeing UFOs. As a matter of fact, the same guy, I was able to get him to send me one of his videos that he thought was so concrete. And when you looked at the video, when you boosted the volume on it and cleaned the volume up, you could hear the drone of an aircraft engine. And it was taken at night, and the three lights were marker lights off of a Cessna 152. And I was able to track down pilots in that region who basically said, yeah, they know different ones who do training exercises at night out here, fly at night for training to get practice in. And they even identified the aircraft for me. But this same individual gets a lot of airtime just because of the fact that he's seen so many unusual things. But when you really look at the substance behind what he's seeing, is a lot of stuff is identified. But it's the way he promotes it.
Wow. I got a question from the chat room. It is from Tabby Cat. And she wanted to know, why do you think the U.S. Air Force has released so many UFO encounters recently, and why do it now?
Well, that's a good question, because when the story broke about the Nimitz that we've talked about on some of the past episodes, the story broke back in 2017 about the encounters with USS Nimitz back in 2004 and 2005, a video that came out from the cameras on board the aircraft. And then there are a couple more videos that came out that were later identified to be from the Teddy Roosevelt from 2014, 2015. Well, the videos that came out were reported to have been released. Well, there's something I didn't feel quite right about that. Something didn't seem quite right. And they came out from a group called To the Stars Academy, which is basically overseen by a rock singer called Tom DeLonge, who was in a rock group called Blink-182. He's got his own UFO group now. He's actually got a number of very good individuals involved with him, very serious individuals, who have very good knowledge of engineering and other subjects. So he's put together a good team underneath of him. But these videos came out, and one of the individuals who was talking about the videos, his name was Luis Elizondo, who actually headed a group for the Pentagon, according to what he said, that did UFO research. The group is typically referred to as ATIP, Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, one of those military terms. Well, he said that, hey, I ran this group for X number of years, and the reason that came out was a story in the Washington Post, or I'm sorry, New York Times. The New York Times brought the story out. The New York Times is doing some research about some things they'd heard. They found out that the Pentagon had been funding a project for doing research of this program that was called ATIP. Well, they did this research. They found out who reportedly ran the program, who was Luis Elizondo. And out of nowhere, like we talked about before, these videos pop up, and they come out through To the Stars Academy. Well, Luis Elizondo, the program with the Pentagon was funded for about 5 years. Reportedly, the funding ran out, but it didn't mean the program stopped. The funding ran out. Elizondo left right around that 2017 timeframe, 2018 timeframe. He actually joined To the Stars Academy as one of their members, and these videos came out through them. Well, he said that the videos had been properly vetted and properly cleared, but as individuals dug into it, and I shouldn't say individuals, but yeah, there actually were a number of individuals. Some of them found out that they were questioning whether the videos were truly cleared for public use. One of the documents that came out through a FOIA request showed that the videos were cleared for internal use at the Pentagon for like briefing sessions, training sessions, etc. at the Pentagon, but not for public. Well, they get out to public, they get on national news, CNN, Fox, all the other networks. They become a big story. The story fades, they come back again. They fade, they come back again. And really getting on to Kat's question on there, I think what happened is when the videos initially came out, they weren't properly cleared for the public. They had been cleared for internal use, but then the Pentagon got pushed into the point that they had to say, okay, the videos are out. What do we do now? So they basically reviewed them, said, okay, there's nothing of national security that's on these videos that is going to be damaging. So let's just go ahead and say, okay, well, officially let it go. Because I think they're just kind of pushed back into a corner because they'd become so public. Well, now they're truly cleared, and all they really say is, these videos are from fighter jets. These videos are something that we don't necessarily know what it is. Or at least they're not admitting that they know what it is. They're not saying it's an alien craft. But one of the comments that one of the guys even made was questioning whether it was a drone. Now, according to the pilots, one of the first encounters, the object moved at very high rates of speed that would be inconsistent with a drone, at least as drones as we know it. They were just moving it was moving way too fast. Some of the other videos were much, slower that could potentially be related back to a drone. But I really think their hand got forced, and they said, okay, let's just go ahead and clear the table. There's nothing here that's of national security. Let's just go ahead and release them. And recently they asked Trump about it. And they said, what do you think about the videos? And he goes, well, that's a hell of a video. But here's the flip side. He was supposedly debriefed on those things. And wouldn't you think he'd know more about it than just it's a hell of a video?
He's just saying it's a good video, but other than that, he couldn't comment anymore. Yeah.
No, he couldn't comment anymore. Did he know more about the story?
I don't doubt it. More than likely, yeah.
But I really think, that their hand got forced, and he said, okay, let's just go ahead and release it, It's not going to change the public's opinion of what's in the videos. So let's just go ahead and do it.
Now, you told me that the Space Force just graduated their first class and recruiting a new class. So what is the Space Force? Is that from Elizondo or is that government?
No, this is government. Actually, this is one of Trump's initiatives. He wanted a Space Force together. And the first thing when you think about Space Force is you think of Star Trek. You think about, secret UFO bases and all this stuff. But really, the biggest thing behind it is satellites, is satellite security. What they want to do is form a Space Force to basically protect our satellites. That's one of the most important things it can do, because if you think about it, how much of what we do on a daily basis is dependent on our satellites. And if somebody started taking out satellites, think about, we could be basically blind. Think of Henry about driving down the road with your GPS on. All of a sudden,
it goes out.
Satellites go on, and there goes your GPS.
Where am I at?
Yeah, and I thought about this the other day. I said, I don't know of any maps I could pull out of a glove box anymore to unfold and to figure out where I'm going.
Oh, believe me, when I first moved out here and smartphones were still science fiction, we had what were called the Thomas guides, which are these massive telephone book-sized maps of Los Angeles and Orange County, whatever area you are, and you would say, "Here's what I'm looking for." Say, "Here's what page it's on and what grid coordinates," and then you try and figure out how to get there manually.
Well, yeah, maps, GPS, or just even cell phone communications. What if they took out communications, period? Banking would be affected. Just across the board, everything we do on a daily basis. Well, that's one of the main priorities the Space Force is going to be doing. And they graduated like 86 people. That's going to be going out to like Vandenberg, I believe it is, out in California. But the biggest thing they're going to be filling is cyberspace operations and intelligence. That's what they're going to be doing. Now, they did have a commercial out there. I don't know if you saw that, Henry, or not. There was a commercial that was on Twitter, of all things. Let's don't put it on TV like, the other commercials for the military. Let's put it on Twitter. So, was it Twitter? Maybe it was Instagram. One of those two anyway. But they put the commercial out, and I found it. And what they've got is this individual looking at the sky. So I almost picture right away, here's Captain Kirk looking at space, dreaming, I'm going to go into orbit one of these days. And really what they're not telling you the whole thing is, to me, it's geared for, like in this case, cybersecurity and intelligence, more so than, okay, we're going to put you on a starship.
Well, you're aware they've already created a sitcom about it, right? Starring Steve Carell.
I saw somebody early. I didn't see the trailer yet, but I want to see the trailer.
And the trailer's okay.
Okay.
Well, they dwell on one gag a little too long. I'm like, just show us more. Just show us more. You don't have to go with this one thing that would have been funnier in the context of the show.
So
it looks like it could be promising, but it just could. The trailer could have been cut better.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out because Steve Carell normally does good stuff. I'll have to see what it is. See if it's kind of like Spaceballs of.
As long as it's better than
Force.
As long as it's better than Avenue 5.
I got another question from the chat room, and then I'm going to let Barbara talk for another 4 hours. How's that sound? This is another question from Tabby Cat, and she wants to know, what is your opinion on the current TV show Project Blue Book, and how accurate do you think it is?
Well, the new show Project Blue Book, it's been on 2 seasons now. And what they do is they take a lot of Hollywood liberties because they've got not really an hour, if you think about it. They've got probably, about 47 minutes, something like that, I guess, to tell the whole story. And when they tell the stories, they combine things together. And now they combine things together, but they're putting a lot of stuff on like 1 or 2 characters, like in this case, the Alan Hynek character. Alan Hynek
J. Allen Hynek.
J. Allen Hynek was professor at Ohio State and Northwestern. He was an astronomy professor. He was a consultant for Project Blue Book. And some of the things that I found myself questioning is when, they bring up all these incidents, I'm like, wait a minute. One of the first episodes, they had him go up on the plane crashed. Did that happen? No, it didn't happen. I'm fortunate enough to know a few people who knew Allen Hynek, and a couple of them very closely knew Allen Hynek. And a lot of stuff was being made up for the show. For example, that first season when he was up in the plane, that didn't happen. What they did is they took an encounter and they basically dramatized it for television to make it more interesting to draw ratings in. So when it was portrayed, a number of things basically were exaggerated or added and made up. They also, at times, take things from maybe multiple incidents and put them into one episode. So let's say, for example, when you go to one of the other episodes and they're going through this whole situation of Allen Hynek doing an investigation, a couple times they brought in like the Men in Black. That may not have happened whatsoever during that reported storyline, but it was brought in to present more sides of the whole UFO story. When they ask his family, his sons, one of his sons actually is in production of media. I think what they were really saying is, okay, yeah, we know there's things that's been dramatized, but the intent is what they were happy with. And the intent is that their father was originally a skeptic on the whole subject of ufology, but as he became more involved with the subject over the years, he began to question a lot more of the outcomes that were coming from these cases. And he became changed basically from a skeptic to a believer that something unusual was happening out there. People were seeing stuff they couldn't explain.
And also, how cool was it to see him as a cameo in Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
I thought that was great.
I flipped out. I'm thinking, how many people in the audience even realize who this is?
Most
I was just so happy.
No, most people don't. But the Project Blue Book series is, I look at it this way. When I looked at it from being a UFO investigator, and as far as factual, staying with the facts, I think the stories could have been very good if they kept everything 100% factual. But at least from my point of view, but remember, I'm an investigator. I do research. But would that keep the public tuning in every week? It may not have. So I look at the show now as basically being like X-Files with a character of Allen Hynek that I have to really imagine that he's more of a...
Mulder?
Yeah, more of a Mulder. He's more of a fictional character and not the true Allen Hynek. That's the way I have to kind of see it.
When I see something, quote, based on a true story, and then I'm watching, I'm like, I know the story, and that's kind of off. It's like when I saw the movie Gladiator, at the end, I was thinking, I'm pretty sure no emperors of Rome died in the gladiatorial arena like this. So I had to look it up, and no, he was killed. He was killed, but he was killed in a bathtub by other people. Russell Crowe wasn't even there.
Bathtub, arena, same difference,
All right.
I think you do have to look at things that way, Jeffrey. You've got to look at the fact that, okay, I know the whole storyline behind it. This is for entertainment.
Oh yeah.
And you just have to look at it that way.
All right, Barbara.
Well, that's like when I watch TV shows about cops or hospitals and such. I'm like, well, this is just an alternate reality. There's no basis on our universe.
There you go.
Okay, Barbara.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the SpaceX program, because it looks like we're getting closer and closer to using the SpaceX rockets for astronauts. I believe Is it June?
Well, one time they said
can't
May
remember.
27th.
Yeah. That may still happen. I don't know.
Yeah, was going to be the first launch. And I really want to see that. I would love to be able to go down to Florida and see it, just to say that I was there at the launch. But, I think it's a good step to get us back into space again, because you think about once a shuttle went out of service,
Right.
we've been so dependent on the Soviet Union for that agreement to get us into space. We need to get our own thing rolling again.
Yeah, I wonder
And when
why. Well, I wonder why we haven't been doing anything like that and just, sharing with Russia.
It's a good question why we've been so dependent all the years, because I can't think it would take us that long technology-wise. But if you think about, though, Henry, too, it's private industry is the one who's getting us back into space again.
Right.
You've got the SpaceX and the others developing the new rockets, the new ships, the new space capsules. And there was an article the other day that, like, when we get back on the moon, it's most likely going to be because of SpaceX and the other organizations. It's not going to be NASA like we knew it in the 1960s. It's going to be more privatized.
Not to mention, the rocket ships are just phenomenal. The reusable parts, something that we haven't had in ages. And I remember seeing the first of the launches that were happening, where the booster rockets were landing, and I'm thinking, this reminds me a lot of the 1950s television shows, where you see the rockets landing like that.
Oh yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing when I saw those, because there was a movie, something like with Lloyd Bridges or somebody in, where was it Rocket Ship X1 or something like that? I forget what it was.
Oh yeah, that was that was on Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah, that comes. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
No, I was just going to say the movie. They don't survive. They kind of like do not. It does not end well for the mission.
I know. It's someone like that, though. You hear the rocket comes down, lands vertically all the time. And there was even a 1950s TV show that was on.
It's either Flash Gordon or Crash Corrigan.
No, this was a totally different one.
Oh.
Plus, those were movie serials.
Yeah, this is like a serial that was on for like a year or two back then. And they played it like on Comet TV or one of those networks like that. And I thought it was kind of comical, but, I just had to watch it because it was related to space. But here the rockets come down, land vertical. But every time I see, the boosters landing, I think of that and you think, wow, they really can do that. But then again, it took a private company to develop the technologies to be able to do it.
Well, not only that, they're landing on a bolt right on target.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Landing right on target, and they're reusing the things like I guess they planned years and years ago, but now it's happening. And when you look at this new space capsule looks like composite materials to me, it looks so high tech now compared to like when you go back and you look at the Mercury, the Gemini, and the Apollo capsules. Those things by comparison.
So tiny.
Yeah, and they look like, from comparison-wise, it's like comparing the 1950s movie back to now. So it just so impressive when I see what they've come up with. So I'm watching for this first launch that, like you say, hopefully it's going to happen the 27th or whenever it is, maybe early June, something like that. I'm just going to keep my eye open for it because I want to see that. See what happens.
Well, once they launch, it'll be the ultimate social distancing.
Oh yeah, and everybody's going to be watching it, probably like the maybe not like when they landed on the moon, but once they do like the first launch or second launch, and they're going to get bored with it again.
Well, until they're talking commercial flights in 2023, something along those lines.
Well,
Yeah, which would be absolutely fascinating for a lot of people.
oh yeah, if you got the money. I mean,
Right,
like Tom Cruise wanting to shoot the movie in space.
I saw that, and I'm thinking, of all the ideas that NASA could come up with, this is kind of no, absolutely not.
What you think of all the millions and millions of dollars to get a Tom Cruise up in space to shoot the movie, and
Well, couldn't they just film it in one of the vomit comets?
well, yeah, I mean, couldn't you just send out Ron Howard to direct it?
Pretty much how they did that.
So that's how they did Apollo 13.
I fell off, didn't I?
There's a lot of people I can think of to send into space, but
And you're thinking not return?
yeah. But it's it's amazing how much progress we're making along the space lines. The new suits that are coming out, the space suits that are going to be the astronauts are going to be wearing on that are completely looking different. Not bulky, a little bit more together. Although I don't know if that's an EVA suit, but still, it's quite amazing. The amount that they're packing in there, and that includes sensory information to look at heartbeat, temperatures, all of that.
Oh, it's substantial difference. And you really think that all this is due to the fact of private industry really stepping in. NASA's
private industry, yeah, and the competition. I don't know who else is Bigelow Industries and SpaceX.
SpaceX, you've got Boeing,
yeah.
and some of the others out there. I mean, and with this, the virus pandemic, you wonder if some of those may kind of fall by the wayside if they've been affected by it too much. Not Boeing and a couple of the bigger ones, but maybe some of the smaller companies may be much more affected by it for the research and some of their participation.
Wow.
Yeah, because there's a lot of subcontractors that they're using, correct?
That's it. A lot of subcontractors, and just been so much development, like you say, but you go back maybe just 10 years even. And I was thinking about this the other day of comparing, NASA, which did a tremendous job. And you take it from the 1950s up to, let's say, the space shuttle. But then you look at the jump of technology in the last 10 years and how much has been done. Like you say, the reusable craft, which the shuttle was, but then again, you've got a booster rocket which can land almost on a dime. You see the new higher tech space capsules, the new high tech suits. And on one hand, I want to question, whether they can obtain, the landing on the moon. Was it by 2024, something like that now?
That's what he wanted, yeah.
On one hand, you think, wow, look how many years it took them to get rolling to get on the moon the first time. Well, maybe they can do it this time in a few years.
Well, they still got all the technology and numbers, so I don't know why they can't still do it.
Well, one time they're saying that, they didn't have the booster rockets available.
Really?
That technology was kind of like, it's almost like people forgot how to do that.
Well, they got to have it written down somewhere.
Yeah, you've got to have something. I mean, you've got rockets setting down at Cape Canaveral that are the same boosters, the same rockets that they used back then in the Saturn V.
Wow.
Well, it's not just that. It's just amazing that we could go to the moon, landed, and came back with a computer that, I don't know if this is accurate or not, it certainly was a good joke, of a pocket calculator, that had the same memory of a pocket calculator.
Yeah, that I would believe.
now we have these supercomputers running, and we could, minimize the space that's needed on a spacecraft for all the instrumentation, and lighten up the load quite a bit.
Oh, definitely. You think comparison-wise, the difference in electronics between then and now. I was fortunate enough to go down and see inside of some of the capsules up close. And when you look at the old Apollo Mercury space capsule, I mean, here's these toggle switches and stuff in there that's the same type of toggle switches I was using for like regular devices around the house. And you think of how much weight those things had to them. You look at how archaic they were inside, and I'm like, I gave the astronauts back then credit for even getting inside these things, because to me it was like being stuck inside of a tomato can and put on top of a rocket, and shot into space.
Yeah,
it was that scary. So I give the astronauts back then a tremendous amount of respect for what they did.
So do I understand that the Chinese has landed a man on the moon on the backside of it?
No, they landed a probe.
Yeah,
a probe. Okay.
Yeah.
Did they find anything there? Of course, they're probably not going to release any information that they got from there, but if they could do it, we should have already done it also.
Yeah, we should have, but we haven't of any knowledge I've got.
No. But they don't have probes on the Mars, which we do. So, and it's probably far more habitable than the moon.
Probably true.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of gases in there on Mars, so it'd be kind of treacherous. Well, you got radiation and everything.
Well, and then if you want to get into some of the off-the-wall stories, Henry, about, well, there are individuals out there promoting stories about we have been on Mars. Some individuals in the UFO community have been on Mars for like 20 years, that we have bases on Mars, that we have secret space programs, not the ones that Barbara's talking about, like the Space Force. But we actually have something like the Starship Enterprise already.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying I believe it.
So
but you have different ones bringing up talking about that. Yes, we do.
How long would it actually take to go from here to Mars?
Well, that I haven't heard.
And that they can go to warp.
You go to warp speed, huh?
Yeah.
Warp speed is, faster than light, theoretically. Creating a warp bubble, static warp field bubble around the ship. And that's how it's able to travel as quickly as it can.
Yes, but see, a couple of ones, and this is where I've got trouble with some of these stories. A couple of ones talking about this. One even talks about having like a Stargate to get there. That's basically what he's doing. He's basically going through like a Stargate. Boom. He was there for 20 years, and when he comes back, he really hasn't aged.
All right. Okay.
But, yeah, these are some of the, let's just say, to me, stories that you have to study a lot more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interesting thing about space travel now, and if it becomes a little bit more commonplace, is, you remember the astronauts, Buzz Aldrin, talking about these light anomalies that they were seeing outside the spacecraft. And the more activity we have sending people to space, the more people are going to be able to see, right?
Well, that's why NASA doesn't do live feeds anymore.
Well, they do live feeds, but they cut them a lot. But
well, the other question is if you get private individuals going up, are they going to be held to non-disclosure agreements if they see something outside the craft? Or if these people see something, can they come out and not be held to non-disclosure agreements? Will more information come out that way? That's been one of the questions. If you think about it, well, yeah, NASA can cut the feed. NASA can tell their people, well, no, this didn't happen. NASA may say, oh, we've got an answer for that. It was ice crystals or something, whatever else. But if
Elsa was the co-pilot.
Yeah, but if it's a private thing, if it's a private individual, can they, basically shut them down? Or let's say if that private individual happens to have their own camera, can NASA or whoever come back and basically confiscate the video and basically block it from being shown?
Well, the SpaceX program at the moment is running concurrent with NASA, correct?
Yes.
So they would have to fall under NASA guidelines for any of that. But any privatization of a spacecraft, for example, if it becomes like, 2001, was it Pan Am? Was flying shuttles to
Right.
to the space station. Yeah, is something along those lines where you pay a private organization to, NASA would have no control. The government wouldn't have any control. Correct.
Right. That's it. Yeah. That's the way I interpret it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea of even mass production of some of these rockets, which seems to be easily done. I mean, I think most of the issues now have just been testing prototypes. But the actual building of the rockets would be relatively quick.
It seems to be. Look at what, in this case, Elon Musk is doing. He's the best example right now. I mean, with SpaceX, here they're reusing the boosters, but these satellites that they're launching for Starlink, they're scheduling like 60 satellites every month. Well, think about that. Building 60 satellites. They're not already all built. They're building them. And they're under this time frame, and every month they're launching like 60 of them, or at least that's what's on the schedule. And they can put 60 in one rocket.
And you wonder what kind of information some of those satellites are actually pulling out.
True. Now, again, they're mostly geared for internet, and at least that's the whole idea, is to improve communication. And probably Jeff Bezos is out there going, yeah, internet, yeah, promote Amazon.
But here's the thing, too. With every single launch that they're doing, and it seems to be like one every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they're fast.
Oh, yeah.
So, and every single time they're perfecting their boosters coming back down, the thing that they have catching the primary booster out at sea, they're nailing those landings now. Before it was sort of hit and miss, but now they're getting really, really good at it. So the more that they're shooting up into space, the better that they're getting on actually putting people up there and having them return safely.
That's right. They're perfecting everything. I mean, I think it was even on the last one, or one of the last ones, some of the panels they were actually able to recover now too, that they hadn't been doing in the past.
Right.
So now you're looking at recovering more components. But you're right, they're perfecting their techniques every single time.
So you wonder,
be great.
You wonder the stuff that comes back, how much radiation it has.
No Andromeda strain. No.
Yeah.
Already got that.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. You don't know how much it's attaining, after somebody launches.
Yeah.
I haven't seen numbers on that, but it'd be something to look at.
Wow. Our time is zooming right on by. We're down to, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes
7 minutes.
Show before we start,
6.
cutting down. I know you sent me a couple pictures of your robots. Now, do you have them programmed to do very much at all? I mean, like, are they fixing your dinner for you?
No, I wish. I wish. Now, these are the things that, as the kid growing up, when I did, and you grew up in the same time frame, basically, back in the 1960s, we didn't have a whole lot. And now it's my second childhood, as I call it. But the thing I'm doing is with my 3D printers, I'm designing everything out, printing them all out. But I'm putting microprocessors in them, and I'm gradually tweaking as I go. So it's going back and learning all these new skills at this age in life, basically. And that's the challenge sometimes, because there's sometimes that you do stupid stuff like, I was looking around for something. I was looking around for some heat shrink material today. I was doing some electrical work, and I couldn't find it, Henry, and I looked 3 inches in front of my face, and it was right there.
That's like me.
Yeah. But I keep improving the programming side. And it won't bring me dinner, won't do things like that. But the thing I hope, though, is to be able to create some of these things from like the old 1960s movies, right. 1950s movies.
Like
You'll see him walking around the room. You'll see him doing basic things. But the thing I'm proud of is it's something just done with spools of plastic, a design program, and some microprocessing chips, and putting all together myself. That's the thing I enjoy about it.
So
that's the challenge.
So will they be on the store shelves for Christmas?
No. No. I put it this way: I couldn't afford to sell them for the hours I put into them.
All right, Barbara, you got anything before we start closing?
Well, yeah. I mean, how's your show doing?
Yeah, I haven't heard the numbers. I got some feedback today from some people on there saying they enjoyed the show because I took a couple weeks off, and they were afraid I had the virus and was down. But I got some feedback from some people in Washington State and some other areas, and we're still there. They haven't got rid of me yet. And it's been I came on January last year, so I think we're doing pretty good right now.
Awesome to hear that. And for people who don't know, what's the show and where can they find it?
Oh, the show's called Ufology.
What? I thought it was Odyssey.
I just had somebody interrupt my wife interrupted me. Ufodicy. She was giving me money. I'm like, what the hell's the money for? But I don't know. Go away.
Here's a bribe. Say it wrong. Here's a bribe. Say it wrong.
Yeah, but Ufodicy. And it's on Odyssey. Actually, you can find it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a number of the other podcasting networks. It's available on demand that way.
And ODYSY1.com.
Yeah, it's an unusual spelling of Odyssey. And actually, the network is being run under the. It was given permission by the creator of Star Trek,
Gene Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry, to be able to go back and operate.
Wow.
Yeah, they'll do some things associated with Star Trek on here. You'll see some things pop up on occasion. There's actually a few shows related back to Star Trek that are on the network.
Cool. You mean episodes or?
No, it's actually one of the characters that passed away. That was Quark.
Armin.
Yeah.
I didn't know Armin Shimmerman had died.
Yeah, he passed away. He actually had his own show on the network for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I guess if people want to get a hold of you because they've seen a UFO, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, if they want to get a hold of me, they can reach out to me through the Ohio MUFON.com website. So it's all OhioMUFON.com.
There you go. And it's Thomas Wertman?
I
had it as MUFON, Ohio. Is there a different site, or do I have it backwards?
MUFON, Ohio. I'm still looking at the money in front of me. I'm totally confused right now.
I tell you,
MUFON, Ohio.
Same as it was. Witness in court.
Yeah, the same as it wasn't Quark, but it was one of the other characters, though, on MUFON. On Star Trek.
Okay, so not Armin. So now I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what happens when you put money in front of my face and I'm not used to it. I'm serious. I'm looking at these like, wow, how much is here?
Yeah, she was wanting something, that's for sure.
What did I do right?
All right. I want to thank everybody for listening and being here tonight, and great questions, and hope you enjoyed the show. You can get a hold of us right here next week at the same time, and we will see you then, because it's just about time for us to go, and I want to thank Thomas for being on with us tonight. So see you next week at the same time. So this is Henry Foister,
Jeffrey Gould,
And Barbara Duncan.
See you then. Good night, everybody. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal View.